if you've been eating less and training more and you still aren't seeing the fat loss results that you're expecting, this video is going to explain why. And by the end of the video, you're going to understand the better approach to fat loss that doesn't require you to eat less. Often it requires eating more, and how you can support your metabolism to actually lose weight and keep it off long term. So, there's no doubt that eating less food can work. I'm sure you've experienced it or you've seen other people where, you go on a diet, you start eating less, and the scale does drop. But the problem is that the body is adaptive. It's not a passive calorie bucket. It does adapt. Its ultimate goal is for you to survive. And so if it notices less energy coming in the form of less food, things are going to start to change, and low energy is going to trigger conservation. So eventually you're going to burn less, your recovery is going to go down, and you're going to feel flat. So we're going to get into all of this, but that's just the broad overview. So your metabolism is constantly responding to signals. So your body is reading inputs from, your food, your training, sleep, stress, movement, and recovery, and it adjusts outputs accordingly. So the inputs come in, these are the signals, and then it adjusts the output. And if the signal it's getting is scarcity, your body is going to go into conservation mode. And eating less does send a scarcity signal. So if you're eating less, like I said, your body wants you to survive. So there's less food coming in, we need to expend less energy, which means that things start to slow down. And this is where we can really run into some issues of everything starting to backfire. So this is how your body actually starts to downregulate. So firstly, lower energy, which I'm sure you've experienced. This is probably one of the bigger things. Like if you start eating less food, your energy levels go down. Like it's harder to get to the gym, which means your workouts aren't as good quality. Your daily movement goes down as well. So, you're not getting up as much. You're just more sedentary. You're not fidgeting as much. Even things like digestion can slow because digestion actually takes a lot of energy. So that's going to slow. This is where you can run into issues like, constipation. You can get reflux, just general, bloating, gas, that sort of thing, because digestion is slowing down. You also have less heat production. So this is one of the biggest things when people do think about metabolism is heat. Like if someone has a high metabolism, they run quite hot. And you've probably noticed where you're reducing your food intake and your heat goes down. And so essentially you feel colder. And then brain fog. So you probably have heard that the brain uses a big chunk of energy in the body. I think it's like 20%. And if there's less energy coming in, there's less energy for the brain. And this is where you're going to experience things like brain fog, just difficulty concentrating, that sort of thing. And then this is a big one as well. So stronger cravings. So this comes from the body searching for food. So it senses that we're getting less food, we have less energy. It wants you to then go out and search for food. So these are usually high fat, high sugar sorts of foods. So high fat foods are calorie dense, so you're going to get a ton of energy from them. And then the high sugar foods bring in a bunch of quick energy. So that's why you do end up with stronger cravings. Now, like I've talked about, so lower fuel equals lower output. So this involves your training, but like general life as well. So intensity of your training is going to drop. Your strength is going to go down as well, which we definitely don't want. Recovery gets harder just because there's less like raw material for muscle recovery and just general, nervous system recovery and all of that. And muscle signals weaken as well. So the idea is that you can't build a higher output body with low output training. So our ultimate goal, which I'll get into a little bit more, but we want a higher output body. Like that should be the goal. And if your training intensity is going down, you can't get a good workout and you're too tired to even go to the gym sometimes, we are not building a body that has a good metabolism. You also move less without realizing it. So this one is really quite interesting because there is a lot of research on general low-level movement. So this is movement outside of your workout. So it can be, walking around the grocery store. It can even be walking around the house. It can be doing chores. It can be playing with your kids. Just that low-level movement, even sitting at your desk and like fidgeting. Like if you're really tired and have no energy, you're going to fidget a lot less, which seems like nothing, but there's actually really good research that shows how much energy you actually expend just from like sitting here and like, moving a pen around or whatever it is, bouncing your leg. All of that really starts to add up. And this is unconscious. So you don't think about moving less, but it happens very quietly and it really starts to add up. And the issue is that with this diet cycle, it can actually make you more fat in the long term. So, like I said at the start, we initially, we'll lose weight when we stop, when we reduce what we're eating, but it can actually really backfire in the long run and make things harder. And just with this too, this is where that yo-yo cycle really starts to come in. And there's research that shows that yo-yoing is actually worse for you than if you just stayed heavier the whole time. So if you lose, 20 pounds, keep it for a little bit and then gain 20 pounds back, which usually you actually gain more than 20 pounds, but let's say you gain the 20 pounds back, that's actually quite hard on the body to be constantly going up and down, which is quite hard. And you just get stuck in this cycle. So restricting food, things start to downregulate. We get these cravings. And just a note on cravings too, like people feel like there's something wrong with them, their willpower, their discipline, because they get these cravings, especially in the evening or in the afternoon, they want these sugary foods and they feel like they are failing. But the important thing here to understand is that these cravings come from the body wanting you to survive. Like if you are trying to ignore these cravings, you are fighting against your physiology and your biology. Like your body's like, we need to eat this chocolate bar to survive. And, no wonder that feels so hard to do. And most of the time you are going to give into that. Then we end up rebounding. And because things have downregulated, so our natural output has come down through things like, decreased digestion, heat output, that sort of thing. When we do eat, go back to kind of like the calories we were on before, it's a rebound, we gain the weight back, and then we start over. Now, a big thing here that we will get into once I get into the steps of like how to actually change this is muscle. So it's important to understand the role of muscle in metabolism. So muscle is very metabolically expensive. So if you look here, it costs about 13 calories per kg per day to maintain lean muscle tissue. And it only takes 4 calories to maintain fat tissue. So that's quite a big difference. So the more muscle you have, essentially the higher your output's going to be. Your metabolism is going to be faster. Faster is not the right word, but just to get an understanding here. And it's just going to make staying lean a whole lot easier. Fat loss is going to happen a whole lot easier. So muscle is important, but if you're eating less, muscle is the first thing to go because, like I said, it takes a lot of energy and fat's easy to maintain. Plus, fat also stores a lot of energy. So it's, like I said, like with high fat food, it's calorie dense. Fat tissue holds a lot of energy, which is really good for survival. Muscle doesn't hold as much energy and it's expensive. So the body's going to get rid of it, which is actually going to make everything harder in the long run. So if you're losing muscle when you're on a diet, you're just setting yourself up for a much harder future in terms of your weight loss journey. So the goal has to change. We're not trying to eat less forever. Because if you also think about that as a side note, if we're cutting calories, so you cut calories, you lose weight, then you plateau. So you cut calories some more. Like at what point are we stopping? It doesn't stop because your body does keep adapting. And at some point, you're going to be eating nothing. And obviously that's not going to work. So the goal is not to eat less. The goal is to burn more and to build more. So we want higher output, better training, more muscle, better recovery, and a body that can stay lean on its own. So the idea here is to raise your metabolic baseline. We want to build a body that can handle more energy. So this is a really big point that I'll just touch on here. So when you raise your metabolic baseline, your body has the ability to handle more energy in terms of eating more food. So let's say I eat an extra 500 calories today because I go to a birthday party and I have pizza and cake or whatever it is. My metabolism can handle that intake of food. So it's going to do things like it'll upregulate heat production. So I'll probably feel hot. My skin will get hot. I can kind of just burn it off like that. It'll increase digestion. It finds ways to burn it off. There's also good research that shows when you do have extra calories and your metabolism's functioning properly, which is just a little nuance there, you will subconsciously move more. So like I said, I might fidget more. I might unconsciously get up and down off the couch more. And your body just can get rid of those extra calories essentially. Like it can handle that on its own. We are also able to train harder, which means, so training is a crucial part of all of this as well, in terms of gaining muscle, but also just the other stimulus and signals that training sends. We want to be able to train hard. We want to be able to maintain muscle. And that's, going to be really important for us here. Recovery is going to get better. We're going to move more, which I touched on, and we can stay lean without having to restrict what we're eating. So we're getting into 5 ways now to raise your metabolic baseline. So I'll go through them one at a time. And yeah, we want to kind of run them all at once. If you're brand new to this, I would just start in this order, just implement them. This week we're doing this one, the next week we do that one. But if you're already doing some of this, you can just run them all at once right from the start. So strength training, we've touched on this a little bit, but we want to make sure your body has a reason to keep muscle, because muscle is crucial for metabolism. So training is not just for calorie burn. I would also argue it's not for calorie burn at all. That is not the point of working out. Whether you are doing cardio or you're doing strength training, it's a metabolic signal. So we want to be strength training. I get my clients to do 3 days a week of full body training. Generally, some of them do 4 days a week. Some are on 2, depending on their schedule. But a good place to start is 3 times a week, do full body training. So core, legs, arms, the whole body. Number 2 is eating enough protein. So I'm sure if you're in this space, you've heard this before, but do try to eat some protein. This is a target to start with, and we want to be making sure we're getting that every day. So protein is going to support muscle retention, which I've mentioned multiple times is really important. It's going to help with recovery. It helps with appetite control as well, so you feel fuller. It stabilizes blood sugar, and it has a higher thermic effect of food. So food takes energy to digest, and protein takes the most energy to digest out of all the foods. So that's why it's really important. And in the comments, in the description of this YouTube video, I'm going to link a little video of me where I talk about what I eat in a day in order to stay at 14 to 15% body fat all year round without ever tracking food or, using MyFitnessPal, restricting food. I just eat what I want. But in that video, I do go into what I'm actually eating for breakfast, lunch, dinner, and snacks. So if you want that, just look in the description and I'll make sure that it's linked there. Number 3 is to stop sending the scarcity signal. So like I've talked about lots, this severe restriction is going to trigger lower energy, higher cravings, training quality is going to go down, recovery is going to go down, and your body's really going to try to conserve. So we don't want to be sending this signal to our bodies. So a modest deficit can be helpful. It's not something I do all the time, but those bigger deficits that most modern diets want you to do are always going to backfire. Number 4 is sleep and stress. So I think these are quite an underrated part of getting lean. And I think it's something most people, don't really think about. And I see it with my clients. Like, they're training well, their food is fine, and they're not losing weight. And when we dig into it, it's usually because their sleep is not good. They might be getting, 5 to 6, maybe 7 hours of sleep a night, but usually like kind of 5 or 6, and their stress is high. And if those things are happening, weight loss is going to be so much harder. So we want to be aiming for 7 to 9 hours of sleep. Most nights, like 6 out of 7 nights of the week, I would say. We want to make sure that our evening routines are pretty dialed in. So dim the lights, stay off your phone, essentially just create a wind down routine, reducing caffeine intake, especially after lunchtime, and then incorporating, some gentle walking, breath work, recovery routines, that sort of thing. And then number 5 is daily movement. So like I touched on before, this is actually a really crucial part of weight loss, is just like the movement you do outside of your workouts. So your workouts are really important. But with my clients, like if they're really busy and they can't get a workout in, I don't even want them to like try to force it. Let's say they're traveling. I'm like, don't even worry about the workout. Just try to like walk more, take the stairs, whatever you can do. Just try to move more all day. And especially moving after meals, just because that's like an added bonus, because it helps with blood sugar, which we're going to get into in the next video that I'm going to release next week. But essentially, if we can manage blood sugar, fat loss becomes a whole lot easier. So that's a really big one. So to start wrapping this up, the overall frame shift is not going to be how little can I eat if you want to lose weight. It's about how do I build a body that burns more. So I always say people do weight loss backwards. They're like, how can I eat less so I have to move less? And I'm more about like, how can I have a body that burns more so that I can fuel more and, have more muscle? My training is going to be better. Also just mental health wise, like your energy is going to be better. Your mood is better. You're going to have more energy for your family and have more metabolic resilience, which I think is like the ultimate goal here. like I said, like let's say I have a 500 calories of cake this afternoon. I'm confident that my metabolism is resilient enough to handle that without me, putting on weight. So, eating less won't fix your metabolism. We've talked about the 5 drops that you can measure that you usually notice. So, energy goes down, your workout quality goes down, you're moving less, you lose muscle, and you start developing cravings. And the next video, like I said, so this is going to be kind of a 2-part series. So, the next video, if it's released, I will link it right here on the screen. But if not, wait for next week and it'll come out. We're going to talk about fat storage versus fat burning mode. So, what I found with working with my clients is that most of them can't lose weight simply because their body is in this sort of fat storage mode, is what I call it. So insulin's high, cortisol's high, they're not sleeping well, they're eating processed foods, and they're quite sedentary, which if you look at that, that's like most people in our society. And it's no wonder their body can't lose fat. It's literally in a state where the signals it's getting is signaling to the metabolism, we should store fat. So the goal is to get into fat burning mode where your blood sugar's stable, cortisol's good, you're sleeping, you're eating good foods, and you're like active by default. So keep an eye out for that. And I'll teach you how to get out of this fat storage mode and into fat burning mode. So hopefully this video is helpful. If you haven't subscribed yet, I'd really appreciate that. And if you could give it a like, and if you have any questions, please put them in the comments and I'll make sure that I get them answered.